I'm Fletcher Rhoden, and this is Quotes and Quips. Today, words of wisdom from Bertrand Russell. Quotes and Quips is brought to you by my website, FletcherRhoden.com, where you can get links to such things as my Amazon.com author page. That's where you can buy my books in paperback, for Kindle, and audiobook format. There's a link to my Spotify artist page, where you can download my many albums and their various subgenres. I've got new music for 2024. Now you can download my music just about anywhere across the internet. But at my website, there's some free music that you can get there exclusively, so check it out. Today, Bertrand Russell brings us some words of wisdom. He says, life is a competition to be the criminal rather than the victim. Life is a competition to be the criminal rather than the victim. Well, okay. This comes to us from the 20th century philosopher and curmudgeon, and it reflects the existential view of mid-20th century life. Although existentialism was born in the late 1800s in the Enlightenment era, it really took root in the American consciousness in the middle of the century after the war. After Americans were faced with the horrors of the Holocaust, people all over the world were, and they suddenly began to question whether or not there could be a God. What kind of God would allow such a horrible thing? So, we have people like Nietzsche and Bertrand Russell and others, famously or infamously atheistic, depending on your point of view. And Bertrand Russell gives us one of these sort of glass half empty rather than glass half full type points of view of society. And while it's true that, especially here in the United States, it's a very competitive culture, it became that much more so after his time. So he was ahead of his time. He was looking ahead to a world that was going to become more competitive and less moral. And of course, in the 80s, we see that this quote becomes really relevant in the era of greed is good. He who dies with the most toys wins. That's really what Bertrand Russell was talking about. But he was not saying it in a happy way. He wasn't glad. I get the feeling that he was rueful of the truth in his perspective. But in the 80s, people embraced that as not a bug, but a feature. However, let me also suggest that Bertrand Russell and Gordon Gekko and others are too limited in their perspective on the human condition, the human experience. There's just too much to us. Society cannot really be grouped into merely criminals and victims. I mean, I suppose one can say that the quote doesn't really say that it does. The quote says that we're all hoping to be one rather than the other, as a survival instinct, I guess. Maybe this is so. But I just don't... I think human society is much too complex to be broken down in that way. I think you really need to take a closer look. I mean, think of the alpha and beta designations from the 1970s. A writer observed what he felt was reliable behavior in the lupine community, that's the wolves, and they were even in captivity. And he isolated two personality types, the alpha and the alpha the leader, the beta the follower. But we now know that those designations are inadequate in every way. They fall short in adequately analyzing the lupine community, as it's based on research that was done in captivity. And it certainly doesn't come close to capturing the complexity of the human psyche. We're more than just alphas and betas. And the beta is a misunderstood psyche anyway, a misunderstood profile in any case. But for sure, human civilization is not just victims and criminals. Now, I did use this quote to open my book, 50 Shades of Trailer Park Boys, TPB in the Great Comedic Traditions, which is still available in its expanded second edition in paperback. But I really think that that's just a summarial and dismissive way to see the human race, you know? We're not all victims. We're not all criminals. I realize most people, I suppose, would rather be a criminal than a victim, but perhaps not. Perhaps some people would honestly rather be a victim, because then at least it's not their fault. Unless you fault them for not becoming a criminal. You know, some people just are not competitively inclined that way. They're not greed is good oriented like that. So not everyone's going to agree with this quote from Bertrand Russell, who really shows his curmudgeonly chops this time around. But he's very quotable, and we'll come back to him on later editions of Quotes and Quips. I'm here every Monday around noon, right here on this YouTube channel. I leave them up in reruns so you can check out other ones. You can also see my show from last year, Tracking the Lone Wolf, on its own YouTube channel, Tracking the Lone Wolf. Those are also open reruns. And if you look around, you might find reruns of my old show, Fletch Me Anything, and lots of other fun stuff. So check it out. Go to my website, read my books, and check out my music, and I'll see you here next time. Until then, bye, Mary.